It's a wonderful and very, very bright Thursday for most of us here at Night Terrors Radio, as snowpocalypse has come and landed on our very heads. From coast to coast, and even somewhere in the middle, considering that I am in Illinois, we are all bundled inside our houses, embedded like ticks, sucking on the blood of working from home for the last 3 days. You're listening to Night Terrors Radio. Happy Thursday, everyone. Hope everyone had a fantastic week. We've got a fantastic show lined up for you tonight. A new episode of Servant just dropped on Apple TV, everybody. I just got my notification. By the way, it is a show that I actually really, really enjoy. So now that I've got that notification, I'll be bowing out. Hope everyone had a great night. We will be having a show. We've got Steve and Hawley Martin with us tonight. Is that how you pronounce your name? Is it Hawley?
No,
close?
it's Hawley.
Hawley. Okay, great.
Hawley, yeah.
Steve and Hawley Martin, we're going to be talking about the afterlife. We're talking about near-death experience. We're going to have a great night. We're going to pick Steven's brain. He already told us he would definitely tell us if he didn't know something. We are going to do the same tonight, so our mics will practically be dead coming from us three co-hosts.
That might have been the last thing I say all night.
Good night, everyone.
Yeah.
Luckily, my sound pad, every single light is just loaded with crickets chirping. That's the entire sound pad tonight. So be absolutely prepared for everything that we don't know. We are going to have a great show. I'm really, really glad that we're back this week. I've been looking forward to having Steven on. This is a topic that I only have great interest in, but I have a lot of questions concerning. So it's great to have you on, Steven. Hope everyone is having a very safe and warm Thursday evening. So what we are going to do, like we always do, is we're going to give everybody a little bit of scoop of what's going on in our universe with the news. The news. We don't know if it's true. We don't have the crack team of investigative journalists to even try to comprehend whether it is. But what we do is we have a couple of people that will take a look at the internet and regurgitate whatever they think is funny. So we've got Brian Cardelli and Rob Pastilli tonight. Rob, why don't you take it away with our first news segment?
Oh, the first one. This could be my favorite news story we've had since we've been doing this.
You seem just beside yourself, Rob.
Because I just don't know how to even jump into this.
You don't know how to start.
Yeah. So an actress from London, her name is Abby Bella. She claims to have been not only abducted by aliens, but to have fallen madly in love with one of her abductors. And she hopes to, quote unquote, normalize interspecies dating. So she
Tale as old as time.
Yeah, everybody's heard this one before. Where
there's an upswell of support from all the southern states here in the U.S. right now, by the way, because all they heard was interspecies.
Like you always say, just Google Florida, man, and right after it will be interspecies dating. So apparently, she was having no luck on dating websites, and she openly wished that an alien would come down so that she could date them. And she had a dream that she was told to wait in the usual spot. So she sat on the end of her couch with her window open, and a green light came in and transported her up to the ship, because that's what always happens, because that's, the usual spot. I mean, like,
At the end of the couch.
Right, the end of the couch, the usual spot.
How many aliens are going to see me on the toilet when they say the usual spot?
Right. I mean,
I'm not prepared to be abducted from the usual spot.
No.
They need to be
Just close
specific.
the window.
Put on
Just
your
close the
Sunday
window.
best and do something you don't usually do. I'll be sitting there with a Jane Austen novel and a cardigan on. Go ahead.
The best part is that okay, she couldn't see them clearly, but telepathically they said that I'm not ready to see them in their true form. Okay?
So it's like regular dating.
Right. Exactly.
This is the same as internet dating completely.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then
They
here's
catfished her.
It's an
Here's the
interstellar catfish.
here's the quote that got me. This is the one that hooked me. There was one who
As we say interstellar catfish, your segues, Rob, are impeccable tonight. Continue.
I try. There was one who connected with me, she gushed, describing the feeling as being in love times 100. I didn't get his name, but I felt exactly the same. So
This
she
was
didn't even
every after-hours party I visited in college.
right. This is my entire freshman year. You know, there's a whole reason why I got that letter from the dean of
By
students.
sophomore year, you were totally jaded and a complete cynic. But your freshman year, you fall in love every Saturday night. That's how it happens.
Oh, I didn't even get a sophomore year. I got the letter from dean of students in the first semester that just said, I really appreciate the money, but you don't even bother coming back.
I got the same letter.
For next semester, you'll be taking classes from the usual place.
Yeah, the end of the couch with the window open. So Abby Bella, I'm sorry.
Abby Normal.
She also said that the UFO visit only lasted 20 minutes.
Well, that's better than most first dates.
I was gonna say that's about 19 minutes and 30 seconds longer than most UFO visits in the dating world.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
So but she couldn't commit because they wanted her to stay aboard the ship, and she didn't know she'd ever be brought back to Earth. So there was a she was totally in love with him after just 20 minutes, but there was that commitment wall, that commitment window.
Yeah. The follow-up is that all of those aliens they deleted their Tinder profiles immediately after that.
Right. Right. It just was terrible on her part. She could have had love that, lasted across a galaxy, and she blew it. She threw it away.
I got in trouble for having girls meet me at Arby's, but the fact that she would meet him at the edge of her bed is like, it's a glass ceiling, honey. You got to break through to get to the good ones. That's what you got to do. Well, thank you very much for our first news segment tonight, Rob. As always, you never disappoint. So Brian's got one that has a name that I just think has a very nice ring to it.
Yes. So this story also a little bit out of this world. This one concerns these two twins, John and Edward Grimes, collectively known as Jedward. They're an Irish singing and television duo. They're identical twins who first appeared as John and Edward in the 6th series of The X Factor in 2009.
They're one half of a jug band. Continue.
Unfortunately, we can't get that album. It's too expensive. All right. I digress. Anyway.
The Jedward Jethro band.
So Jedward claim that they are stalked by aliens and urge them to make contact. So they are the latest people to come forward and say they've seen aliens. They claim some kind of extraterrestrial has been stalking them. The twins, who are 30 years old, recently shared a video on TikTok on their channel, which I will mercilessly not give you. Mercifully, let me change that, in which they addressed the aliens and said they were not afraid. In the short clip, the two twins, again known as Jedward, said the aliens were stalking them, and they signed off by saying, "Please contact us." The video has been viewed over 40,000 times. Many of their fans commented on the video, seem to agree that Jedward would be good representatives of life on Earth.
So now I'm a little confused here.
That's the punchline.
I'm a little confused by the idea of being stalked, but yet then they have to reach out for communication.
Yeah, me too. Right? I mean, if they're stalking you, then you don't need to say, "Hey, please."
This sounds like reverse psychology.
Just turn around. They're right there.
Right. Because my junior year in high school, I tend to remember I was also being stalked by the entire group of cheerleaders. But please reach out to me, please.
Right.
Yeah.
We need to get the situation cleared up.
So what they need to do is they need to reach out to the first news story. Just sit on the end of her couch.
And they'll be there.
This is matchmaking at its finest here.
It really is.
2 email addresses, we can get all this business cleared up.
Right. we'd have the perfect representatives from Earth, we'd have a marriage, and we'd have the stalking would be over.
So when we found this wonderful duo, Jedward, Rob sent me a music video, which I discourage anyone from putting themselves through, but it's a mashup of Ice Ice Baby and Under Pressure, where they do both songs at the same time. Don't.
Just stay far away from it.
Yeah, don't.
Remember, I almost had a little ditty from Doug Clark and the Hot Nuts queued up on YouTube earlier.
You did.
That again, out of sheer mercy, none of the viewing or listening audience has had to deal with as of yet. Well, I want to thank everyone for pulling the resources together this week to get us two fantastic news items. Albeit I might have to again listen to them in my usual place a little bit later. They are pretty flush worthy. So thanks, Brian. Thank you so much, Rob. We have a wonderful night planned for everyone who has stuck around, and the numbers have definitely dwindled since both of those news items hit the airwaves.
Your mom's still.
Steve, Hawley, Martin, it's a pleasure to have you on. The subject matter that we're going to be talking about tonight is something that has interested me for years. I think it interests the entire mass populace. I think these are some rather large questions that we tend to ask ourselves. And I think that a large portion of the world right now is probably asking itself a little more than usual, considering everything that everyone is sort of going through right now. This is definitely a time for reflection and introspection right now, I think, globally. So if you could, Stephen, could you give our audience a little bit of a background of sort of like what your background is, who you are, sort of, where you come from, and maybe what you'll be talking to our audience about tonight?
Yeah, well, I'll be happy to. I've written a couple of books about life after death and whether it's really happens or not. And but it all started a long time ago when I had a out-of-body experience. I'm not sure whether it was a near-death experience or whether it was maybe because I had a little bit to smoke or drink or something like that. But I did feel pretty awful at the time, tell you the truth. And I flopped down in my bed, and all of a sudden I was looking at myself down on the bed from the ceiling. And up until that point in my life, which I was about 25 at the time, I had thought that I was my body. That I grew up in a household that believed in scientific materialism, physicalism, I guess you call it. It's when that nothing exists if you can't see it under a microscope. It doesn't exist. And that's what we're taught in school, by the way. But looking down at myself, looking like roadkill on my bed, I thought to myself, gee, I'm up here and my body's down there. Therefore, I'm not my body, I'm my consciousness. And that started me on this quest, which I've been on ever since. I joined the Rosicrucian Society, which is a society of mystics that study metaphysical laws, and I took all their courses and made it all the way up to adept. I read everything I could get my hands on. And then about, I don't know, I guess 10 or 12 years ago, I had a podcast. We didn't call it podcast then, we called it internet radio, where I interviewed people who were studying metaphysics. I interviewed quantum physicists. I interviewed people who had near-death experiences. I interviewed those who were studying paranormal activities and ghosts and things like that. I interviewed a lady who had been researching whether or not psychics can actually communicate with the dead, all that sort of thing, over 100 interviews. And since then I've been writing books about it because I've learned an awful lot. And I do believe now, even though I grew up thinking I was my body, that we are not our bodies, that we are eternal spiritual beings who are having a temporary physical experience right now, but we will continue on forever, perhaps in different forms, but than this physical reality. But we're here for the long haul. So that's what I think. Ash, what do you think?
Well, one question that I want to ask you first of all is this first out of body experience you had. So, was there any sort of prerequisite to that as far as were you feeling a particular way? Was there a physical sensation? Looking back, was there anything that said, okay, there was a lead into this, there was a segue, or did it just sort of happen?
I'll tell you exactly what happened. It was a Saturday night. I was single at the time, 25 years old, didn't get married till I was 27. And I was living in an apartment in Baltimore, Maryland with two other bachelors. And I was sick as a dog with the flu upstairs in my bed. Now, Saturday night, when you're 25 years old, you don't want to be at home in bed sick. Well, I was reading a book. At the time, I remember it was Metamorphosis by Kafka, or whatever his name was. And I think the character was turning into a cockroach at the time. And when I heard some people come in downstairs, it was a 2-story apartment. Some people come in downstairs, and then some more people came in, and some more people came in. And after a while, I realized there was a big party going on down there. And so I was sick with the flu, but being 25 and not wanting to be sick with the flu, I decided I would get up and go downstairs and maybe have a drink or two, and I might feel better. So that's what I did. I put on some clothes, went down, had some scotch, and then I had some smoke. I mean, it was the 70s, so, that's what we did back then. And after a while, I just felt horrible. And
I've got no excuse for my last Saturday night at all, by the way, Stephen. But continue, please.
So I just sort of knee walked back upstairs. I was really feeling bad, and I flopped down on the bed, and it felt like it was spinning, like I was the blade of a helicopter when it took off. And suddenly, I didn't feel horrible anymore, and I was looking up at the ceiling, and I was studying the little cracks in the paint and the little dirt in between, and thinking this ceiling needs a new paint job. And I kind of turned and looked down, and there I was on the bed, my body on the bed. I really almost didn't recognize myself because I looked so bad. But it didn't last very long. It lasted probably, hard to tell, but maybe a couple of minutes or something like that. And the next thing I knew, it was the next morning, and I was awake and feeling a little bit better than I did the night before. But that's exactly what happened. Later on, about 10 years later, I had another similar kind of experience, but it was after I'd done all that searching and joining the Rosicrucian Society and so forth, and I was meditating in my backyard, and it was a beautiful late spring or early summer day, perfect weather, and I was meditating, and I felt like I merged with the universal mind, or whatever it is. It's like I saw auras around all the trees and the plants and the flowers, and I felt like all I had to do was think about a topic or a subject, and I got a download of all the information, of the universe. And I knew all the answers, and that lasted, I don't know how long, but maybe 5 minutes. But that really was what convinced me that we are spiritual beings. We're really all part of one mind. We feel like we're separate. We've had these egos that have been built up since birth and make us look at everything and everyone else as something separate from us. But the fact is, we're all one mind. And that's what came out of that experience. That was the realization that came out of that experience. And again, I've been reading and studying ever since. And what I've learned has confirmed all
that. Now, you look like you had something that you wanted to say, Rob.
I had a question. Now, in your research, as you go through this, did you find that there was some sort of trauma prior to several of these other experiencers having these NDEs or these out-of-body things? Or was it more along the lines of what you were saying with meditation and, that meld, or was it kind of a combination of both?
Well, most people that I have talked to that have had an out-of-body experience, it was a near-death experience where they were in fact clinically dead. A typical one would be where someone is on the operating table and their heart stops, and they suddenly feel themselves leave their body, and they're able to look down at the operating room, and they can tell you what the doctors were doing and what the doctors and nurses were saying to each other and that sort of thing. A classic case is Pam Reynolds was her name. 30 years ago or so, she was diagnosed with 2 aneurysms in her brain, and they were inoperable, at least inoperable from the standpoint if they opened her up and went through her brain to get to them, they would, destroy her brain. So what they did is put her on the operating table, put her under, and drain the blood from her body. They opened up her arteries down in her thighs and drained the blood. She was literally a cadaver on the operating table. That they were able to open up her skull, move the brain aside, and fix these aneurysms. Because if they'd done it when there was blood running through the veins, those things would have burst, and that'd have been the end of her. Well, when that happened, she apparently just left her body, was able to hover there above herself, her body, and watch what was going on. She was able to describe the instruments that the doctor was using. She was able to describe exactly what the nurses were saying and others who were working on her. And when she came back, she was able to describe that, and they confirmed that indeed she had it right. Well, during that time, she felt pulled toward a light. She turned and looked, and she went toward it. She went into the light. She met with a grandmother who had passed away before and talked with her. She met with an uncle who she'd been very close to before he died, and talked with him and communed and so forth. And eventually the uncle said, well, you got to go back now. And she said, I don't want to go back. And that's a typical reaction to these near-death experiences, is once they get to this place where there's all this all-encompassing kind of feeling of love and so forth, they really want to stay there because they feel like they're home. But he said, no, you got to go back. And he kind of took her back down through that light and into the operating room, and she saw her body down there. She said, I don't want to get into that. She was dead. It was a cadaver. But anyway, I guess they use those electroid things where they pop you on your chest, and she suddenly was back in her body and able to describe all of that, much to the surprise of the doctors and nurses and so forth. But there's a video on YouTube you can watch that describes, it's Pam Reynolds' near-death experience. I guess if you put that into YouTube, you would find it. And they interview the doctors, and really, it's hard to dispute that what happened to her, because she had it right. She got all the information, things that she could not possibly have known while she was lying there on the operating table with the blood drained out of her.
Now, you had talked about coming from a family that was very scientifically based.
Yes.
So when you started to have these experiences, did you immediately think that you had something that was, otherworldly, or, did you yourself try to explain it away? Because I know that I've talked to some, people who have had, an NDE, and they've remarked that for a while they tried to explain it away, that was easier than admitting that they had been through something that was as irrevocably life-changing as that was. How was the experience for you?
Well, I would say that that was a little bit of my experience. As I said before, when I looked down at my body, I said, wait a minute, to myself, I said, wait a minute, my body's down there and I'm here. So, but the idea that I was my consciousness, and it took a while for that to sink in. But what it did was make me curious to, I mean, I didn't just immediately become a spiritual type person or reject what I had learned for the last 25 years and been taught in school for the last, 22 or so, however many years I was in school. It took a while to shake all that. It really, before I was totally convinced, I would say it took 10 or 20 years really to completely let go of that materialistic view that I had, that I grew up with.
And how was it when you finally did? I mean, what was that sensation like? Because obviously you held on to some kind of rigidity in your belief system for that long, and then surrendering that. What was that like for you, Stephen?
It's not easy to give up. I mean, if you give up on something that you've been taught and have believed, it's hard to change a belief. But once I did, it was very, very liberating, because once you realize that you are an eternal being, that you are going to go on forever, that death is not the end, that it's only a transition to some other reality, it changes the way you view the world. And it's a very liberating change, because you realize that, there's nothing to fear. I mean, I'm a little bit like what Woody Allen said. Woody Allen said, I'm not afraid of death. I just don't want to be there when it happens. And that's kind of me. I don't want to go through the pain of it. But I'm told by those who have had near-death experiences that often, when it looks like that the end or death is inevitable, whether it's a car crash or jumping out of a building or, whatever, that your consciousness leaves your body before you even really feel the pain of the impact or whatever it is. So to answer your question, yeah, it's a very liberating feeling to realize who you really are, which is that you are a spiritual being. You're part of this one life that really we're all part of and don't realize. Ash, so back to you.
I would like to just throw something out at you. In 1999, I was being the typical guy. I was experiencing a lot of pain, a lot of problems, and just was dealing with it. And eventually I got to the point where I had to go to the hospital and found out that my appendix had ruptured. And I had been in the emergency room for quite some time with that, having gone on. And I went in on a Saturday and woke up on a Wednesday to my chest just being in massive amounts of pain. And when my doctor came in and asked him, what had happened, he was a family friend that was the doctor, and he goes, you died on me, asshole, don't ever do that again. And it kind of, it was weird, because I did not have any of those experiences that other people have. And from that point, I started researching the paranormal, investigating the paranormal, investigating and stuff like that, to the point where, I'm in my 20th year of investigating it all. Do you think there's hope for someone like me to get to the point where you are, to be able to kind of make that, I don't know if it's rational or whatever jump that needs to happen, that,
I think so. I think it is possible. Not everyone who goes through what you went through and are clinically dead remembers the near-death experience that they had, or remembers leaving their body and so forth. I think it's the studies. The University of Virginia has been studying this, their School of Medicine, there's a division called the Division of Perceptual Studies, and they've been studying. They started out with children's memories of past lives, something like 60 years ago. In the early 1960s, they got a grant from the guy who invented the Xerox machine, gave him a lot of money to study about reincarnation. And they have been studying that, and they added on near-death experiences, 30 some years ago. And in fact, Raymond Moody, who wrote really the first popular book on the subject, Life After Life, did that while he was at the University of Virginia as a resident in the medical school. And their studies indicate that only about somewhere between 15 and 25% of those who actually have a cardiac arrest or are clinically dead recall the leaving the body and so forth. But that doesn't mean that you didn't. We forget a lot of things, or we don't remember a lot of things. I don't remember when I had too much to drink when I was 22 years old, that night that I drove home somehow. I don't remember how I got home, but I did. I must have done it because I did get home. And anyway, I was lucky, I guess. But anyway, the point is, I don't think it was my near death or out of body experience that really clinched it for me. Even the experience of merging with the infinite mind, if that's what happened when I was meditating in my backyard, it was really more after I had really talked to a lot of people who had the experience. I'd talked to quantum physicists who were studying cosmology and how the universe began, and talked to some who believed that consciousness and the unified field that they talk about in quantum physics, where everything came from, are really kind of the same thing. That maybe that consciousness is not only primary, but it is the ground of being, that really this material universe that we live in is like a giant dream, that we're all characters in it, and that it's consciousness that creates matter. And in fact, there's a professor, I think he's retired now, but that I interviewed from the University of Maryland, who was studying. He was really into the paranormal things and studying, and he found this woman that lived in Florida who has what he calls something that looks like tinfoil, or he wrote a book called The Gold Leaf Lady and Other Paranormal Phenomena. And this gold leaf lady he says it's like the foil on a Hershey's Kiss that appears on her skin, and it looks like gold. And he took some of it. It actually just appears on her skin. And he took some of it and had it analyzed, and it turns out to be 80% zinc and 20% copper, or vice versa. I'm not sure. But anyway, it's brass.
It materializes on her skin.
It materializes on her skin. And long story short is, he believes that it happens because she is getting back at her husband, who kind of ridiculed her about something. And, he said, well, she got something that, she was proud of. And he said, well, but it's really not worth anything. And so now she has this fake gold, this foil that's actually brass, appears on her skin. Well, it's her mind that creates that. And if her mind can create brass foil, then couldn't the infinite mind create all this reality that we're living in? So it's things like that. It's really over time that eventually I realized, it's much more logical. What I believe now is much more logical than what the scientific materialists believe. How could this universe have been created by matter without something behind it to do that? I mean, really, to think about this. If matter is all there is, then intelligence and consciousness could not have existed until evolution produced a brain. But think about the DNA molecule that is absolutely essential for life. The DNA molecule inside every cell of your body is that double helix thing that's all coiled up. If you stretch that thing out, it would be over 6 feet long. And what it is very similar to computer code that tells the cell when and how to make proteins at the right time in the right amounts. And it's absolutely essential for life. Well, how did something 6 feet or more of computer code come about if there wasn't some intelligence behind it to make it happen? I mean, it's to me, it's much more logical than what the scientific materialists believe. How about all the laws of the universe? As one scientist said that I talked to, it's like they say, give us one free miracle and we'll describe the rest. And the one free miracle is all the laws of the universe, all the physics, the physical laws, everything, and all the matter of the universe coming from nothing in a single instant, the Big Bang. Makes no sense.
Well, something that's always sort of puzzled me, and still does, and I don't think this is just from the idea of my own existential crisis, of which I'm going through many at this moment, by the way, is this idea of there's really no place in a universal map for a sentient alpha predator such as humans. We really serve absolutely no purpose. Now, when you do look at, contained ecosystems, any kind of animal, even going to microscopic bacteria, these are purposeful creatures, but they're only purposeful from a histrionic view of a sentient alpha predator. I just feel as though humans, for example, we really don't have a place in the narrative. And that's where I do sort of lean to some kind of overarching design, because our main function is to chronicle. Our main function is really to dictate time, is it not?
Well, I think that what we're getting to now is what's the purpose of life? What's it all about? And the conclusion I've come to, and I could be wrong, but it seems to be that if you look around at life on Earth, that what does everything do? It evolves. Evolution is what life does. And that is what we are here to do. We are, as I said, spiritual beings, but we come to Earth in physical bodies. We have to get here through, our mother's womb. It's sort of, and we're born with this like diving suit that allows us to operate in this environment. But what do we do here? We evolve. We have the existential crises. We have problems. We have financial problems. We have work problems, love problems, one problem after another through life. And so you think, well, what in the heck? I mean, why would we even want to do that? It's not fun. Well, it's because when we meet these problems, we learn something. Every time something happens that you have to deal with, when you're going through it, you don't like it at all. It's horrible. And when you finally do get through it and you look back at it, you think, yeah, that was horrible, but I'm a better person because of it. I learned something from that. And maybe next time when I meet a similar problem, I'll deal with it in a better way. So I think that's really what we're doing here. We come here knowing that we're going to face all these problems, but we also know that we're coming into what seems to be like a big university where we learn from mistakes we make and from problems we meet, and from we slay the dragon. It's the hero's journey that we're on. We leave our home, we go out to a strange place, we fight the dragons, we go into the belly of the whale, we find the witch's broom, and we bring it back to the wizard. And eventually, after we realize he's a fraud, he gets us back to Kansas.
So my witch's broom had a woman on it, and I ended up marrying her. Luckily, I
well, a number of us had been through that one.
Hey, Stephen, I want to stop you for just a second. We have a lot of interaction usually in our chat room, too, which is live going on at the same time. And we've got a lot of interaction tonight. People are very, very curious about what we're talking about. We've got Justin in our chat room says, these bodies are just a pit stop in the greater scheme. We're just not supposed to know what that is while we are here. It's just training for the next level. Can you speak to that at all, Stephen?
Well, I think that Jason's, is that what his name was, Jason? Justin's onto something there. Yeah, I think that these bodies are, like I said, they're like an overcoat, or they're like a diving suit. You know, if you're going to go down and check out.
I like that analogy, by the way. I like the diving suit analogy.
Yeah, it's like if you're going to go down and check out the Titanic on the bottom of the sea, you know, you got to have a diving suit to be able to do it, because you wouldn't last very long. Well, that's what these bodies are. They allow us to operate in this physical reality, which is very different than the non-physical reality that we came from. In the non-physical reality we came from is mind, and in that reality, whatever you think becomes reality right away. Your mind creates your reality there instantly. In this reality, your mind creates your reality, but it takes some time. And that's what we eventually learn, is that our beliefs, our thoughts create our reality. And once we learn to create the reality we want and deal with the problems and so forth in a way that makes sense, then we've learned what we came here to learn. Unfortunately, we usually don't do that in just one incarnation. That's why I believe that reincarnation is a fact. And of course, the University of Virginia has been studying it for 60 years, and they've got over 2,500 cases of children who remember past lives where they've gone and checked out what the children said, and what the children said checked out with somebody who actually did live in the town and have the name and the job and so on, the family that the child described. So, yeah, I think we're moving on to something else. I don't think that we're going to be coming back into this reality forever. I think that once we've got it mastered, and then we'll be able to move on. I compare it to the movie Groundhog Day, where Bill Murray's character is a real jerk when it starts out, but he keeps repeating the same day over and over again until he finally becomes a pretty nice guy and treats people nicely and does the right thing, and is more loving toward everybody. And he not only is able then to move on to February 3rd, but he gets the girl, you know, and that's kind of what we're here doing.
And you've talked about your interest scientifically with quantum physics, and I think, you know, I'm getting this understanding that maybe there are times where we can peek sort of like behind the curtain, and I think maybe the studies we're doing with subatomic particles, like double slit theory, the fact that we're able to actually change the experiment, you know, through our observations. Do you feel that way? Do you feel like that's just a little peek? Do you feel like maybe there's a time where science also meets the metaphysics and we can sort of look beyond the veil?
I think quantum physicists, most of them realize, and the ones I've talked to do, realize that there's really, that mind is everywhere, that it's non-local. And the double slit experiment that you mentioned proves that, in my opinion, because anybody who may not be familiar with it, the double slit experiment, when you shine light through two slits that are not as wide as the wavelength of light, it forms a zebra pattern on a screen. If you close one of the slits, leave the other one open, it creates just a round light on the screen. Well, physicists decided to investigate that by shooting one photon of light. Light is both a wave and a particle, which is kind of an oxymoron or whatever. It's, you know, two things at once. They shot single protons through these double slits. If they just did that, what happened was a zebra pattern appeared on the screen, just as though the light had been shining all at once. And yet it was only one photon at a time. But when they measured which photon, each photon went through and where it hit, when they measured that, it caused the pattern on the screen to be a bunch of dots where the photons hit. So the fact that the researcher was able to know where each photon hit changed the outcome of the experiment. Knowledge changed the outcome of the experiment. Awareness changed the outcome of the experiment. So how could that happen? If your mind is enclosed within your skull, how is it going to affect the outcome of an experiment? Wouldn't be able to. So obviously it is not confined within your skull. It's part of the bigger mind that we're all part of, that I've been talking about. So the double slit experiment to me is one little bit of proof of what I'm talking about, that we indeed are all part of one big mind. We just think we're separate because we each have egos and we've grown up that way.
Now, these corroborative experiences, these are the things that that really sort of get me interested in this topic. The experiences where someone sees something going on in a room adjacent to them while they are clinically dead, and they're able to relate that information to the people when they are conscious again. What were some of the benchmark moments for you in researching some of this as far as the corroborative experiences? What were a couple of them that really stood out for you?
Well, one, there are a couple of them. Let me see if I can describe one that comes to mind, which is there was a boy who was sick with meningitis, and his parents were by his bedside for quite a while, something like 36 hours. During that time, the boy, I think, had a near-death experience. And when he came out of it, he told his parents that he had been visiting with his sister, who was away at college, and that his sister had told him that she was had to stay there, but he had to come back from this near-death experience. Well, this, of course, upset his parents. They'd been by this boy's bedside for something like 36 hours. So the father went home, and when he got home, I guess on the voicemail, the people at the head of the university had been trying to get in touch with him to tell him that his daughter had been killed in an automobile accident. So in fact, what happened is the child had a near-death experience, of the one with meningitis, saw his sister that nobody in the room knew was dead, spoke with her, and she told him he had to come back. So, something like that. How do you explain that? Another one that stands out is a fellow named Bruce Grayson. He was a psychiatrist at the University of Virginia School of Medicine. I think he's retired now, but he was the head of that division of perceptual studies that I talked about. And when he was I guess he was a resident at the University of Virginia School of Medicine, he was working in the ER, the emergency room, and someone came in who had been injured and I guess was put in a room and had a near-death experience while she was there. Well, Grayson went out to talk to the friend, I guess, who had brought the girl to the emergency room. And he discussed, what was going on and blah, blah, blah. And then he goes back into the room where the girl that was injured was, And she described to him what he was doing when he was out in the waiting room talking to her friend, and things, and what he said and so forth. So in other words, she had this near-death experience and witnessed the doctor talking to her friend about it. Now that convinced him that there was something to all of this, because obviously there was no way for her to know that, because she had been in the hospital room where she was and had the whole time. So things like that. And it happens, there's so many stories. There's a website that has over 1,800, I believe, accounts of near-death experiences described by people. There's a society, what's it called? The International Association of Near-Death Survivors, IANS. If you put that into YouTube, you'll find that there's a channel they have where they have lots of people who describe these near-death experiences. They have conventions and speakers and so on and so forth. So, it's become quite a thing, and it's pretty hard to deny that there's something going on there that looks awful lot like maybe there is life after death. I think there is. I think that we, as I said, we're eternal beings.
I think Brian has got a question. I've seen him itching up there.
Yeah. Hi, Stephen. Thanks for first of all, thanks for coming on the show. It given me I've written down some things to research. Full disclosure, I've been investigating the paranormal for over 10 years now, but I'm still fairly skeptical about a lot of things. But I mean, this is life's ultimate question, right? I mean, what happens when we die? What happens to us? And I know you were talking a little bit earlier about, our kind of our purpose for being here was to kind of learn. It was almost like Hindu, based on like the Hindu perception of karma and coming back, reincarnation, and kind of getting better and better and better until you reach this level.
Until you don't have to come back anymore.
Right. So is that kind of what you were saying?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. And it's interesting, like I said, you've given me some things, I've written some things down to look into. I think, my ultimate question, because I don't know what happens. I don't think any of us will really know until it permanently happens to us. But I guess the question is, with all that, why do you think we even have a physical life here? I mean, I know you kind of answered it with that we got to learn certain things, but why do you think, why do you think we even have that?
Well, that opens up a whole another topic, which I'll be glad to address, and I'll try to put it as briefly.
Can I just throw my hat in the arena with ice cream? Is that too simple?
Ice cream is a good reason.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Very good reason.
In fact,
I'm all in.
Sex is another one.
Yeah.
But
if I could have the two together,
sex with ice cream,
and not get an order protection, I'm all for it.
Again.
Yeah. Well, anyway. All right. Imagine
pictures up in Baskin Robbins, by the way. It's not a good story for the air. Go ahead, continue.
Imagine there's an infinite mind, consciousness that is the ground of being. And that infinite mind is all there is. That infinite mind could not know itself because it's all that is. In other words, it cannot step outside itself and look at itself and think about itself if it is all that is. What if it created little sparks, little offspring that could go out and maybe incarnate and didn't know that they were part of all that is? Then that would be a way for that all that is to know itself and find out about itself. One of the things that one school of thought says there, and it's the raw material, the law of one, says that there are seven states of consciousness that kind of go up a scale. The first is just matter by itself, like the moon without any life on it, or Earth before it had life. The second is Earth with plants and animals, but the plants and animals are alive, but they don't know themselves, they can't step outside themselves. That's kind of like the one life. Then step three, or the third, what's called the third density in that raw material, is life that has self-awareness. That's us. We can think about ourselves and why are we here, and ask these kind of questions and so forth. So that is, when that happens, the infinite mind has a way of knowing itself, and I guess it knows itself through the plants and animals to some extent, but more so through these sentient beings that have self-awareness. And it goes on up the scale. Eventually, level 7 or seventh density is when you return to the source, and then it probably starts all over again. But so I think that the purpose of life is evolution, is we're evolving each time we come here. Hopefully, sometimes we go back, retrogress. We don't always move forward, but maybe 2 steps forward, 1 step back kind of thing, until eventually we do get to return to the source, or not to have to reincarnate. But the other part of it is the source knowing itself, experiencing all these things that are going on in this universe. There's a guy named, what was his name? Alan Watts, who used to tell children when they asked about these sort of things that God is all there is, but he wants to, he's created us so that we can all play hide and seek, and have all kinds of adventures and games, and really have a lot of fun. But eventually we will all wake up and realize that that's who we are. We're all really just God playing hide and seek with each other. So there we are. I don't know.
That's probably one of my more favorite sort of romantic explanations of things. Just what you said there. That's very interesting to me. So I'm going to go back to ice cream for a second, just because now that we've talked about it, I can't stop thinking about it. But I think that model sort of works for me, and the way that my brain works is that if I created ice cream and I knew what every flavor tasted like simultaneously, I would probably create something that could taste an ice cream flavor for the first time again, so that it could help me relate the first experience of ice cream all over again. Like, I would probably create that. Like, at some point in time, I'd be like, I need some ice cream data here. And I have all of the data at my fingertips. How can I do this? Well, I'll create something that isn't aware of ice cream, and I'll have it go out and experience ice cream. Then it can come back to me and be like, wow, that's like me eating ice cream for the first time again. So, unfortunately, all of my spirituality comes back to the basic instinct of eating something that I really enjoy the taste of.
Well, I think that's an excellent way of looking at it. It makes a lot of sense to me too. Yeah, I think you're onto something there. That's a good one. Can I use that in the book?
Most certainly, you can. This is the absolute fastest hour on the internet, Stephen. And we say that every week. It seems like just when we start delving into some of these mysteries, it's time to wrap it for the evening. We can't thank you enough for coming on with us tonight. Where can people learn more about your books, your research? Where can people go to learn more about the things that you've studied, Stephen?
Yeah, this is glad you asked that. Go to my website. It's a really easy one to remember. My name's Stephen Hawley Martin. My website is shmartin.com. If you look up at the top, you'll see the menu. It says books is one of the tabs. Click on that. You'll go to the page you'll see covers of all my books. All you got to do is see one you're interested in, click on it. It'll take you to the page on Amazon where you can read the first couple of chapters, or find out what other people have said about it, whether it's got any stars or whatever. So it's shmartin.com. Please come to my website. If you have questions, send me an email. You do that through the contact page, and I will try to answer within 24 hours. I love to get emails from people, so I hope you will do that.
And I hope you do get some, because we've had a lot of people pop in our multiple chat rooms tonight. I think people have been fascinated by our conversation, and definitely people's responses to this, I think, validates that we probably need to have you on again, Stephen, for another hour, because I feel like we just scraped the surface, but yet even scraping the surface, I feel like we got into some really deep conversations. I would love to continue this conversation at some point in the future with you.
Well, please do. Please have me back. I'd love to come back. I've enjoyed it very much. Thank you.
I want to thank everyone who popped in and out of the chat room tonight. There are quite a few of you. Thank you so much for listening simultaneously on YouTube, Twitch, and Facebook. We are live every week. Again, the fastest hour on the internet. This is Night Terrors Radio. You got a few moments off the air for us, Stephen?
Yeah, sure.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Next week, what do we got lined up next week, Rob?
We've got Alexis. I'm hoping I'm saying her name correctly. Alexis Tasso. She is a collectibles expert. She's going to be coming on to talk to us about collectibles, because none of us.
Oh, no, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Involved in collectibles whatsoever. The following week, we have author Ed Ashton, whose new book, Mickey 7, is coming out. I believe it's the actual release date is the date of our show.
Are we going to get into some futurism and possibly synthetic universes? You think we're going to get in that with Ed? Okay.
Just like last time, he's gonna make us all feel dumb. There's just no way around it. He's sort of a genius. And then after that, we have Paranormal Caught on Camera. I mean, that's the one I'm really.
Brian Kano, from Paranormal Caught on Camera, the uber popular travel channel show.
So, I mean, we've got 3 great shows coming up here in the next 3 weeks, and then we're going to kick off March big. But yeah, next week, collectibles. You're
gonna see me geek out in a way that is almost unprecedented for my age.
They're not toys.
No,
action figures.
That's right.
Well, thanks again, Stephen. We can't actually thank you enough for being on with us tonight. And again, thanks for all the audience participation from our listeners.